How you doing, Stosh Vlog fans? This is Stosh on a different camera. Continuing on my series of the controversy between the touchy subject of who has the most medals. Who's the most decorated soldier? Is it Audie Murphy or Matt Urban? I'm doing this because basically it's undeniable that the Polish-American group doesn't need some heroes. Or the Poles, for that matter. It's been described by certain people as much maligned. We need a hero. I had a comment from a guy who was a university professor who came on and said, these guys would be offended if you brought up this subject, and they don't like to talk about what went on. You know, I've seen a lot of disparaging comments that Urban pursued his Congressional Medal of Honor and so forth by, you know, the legion, one of the legion of Audie Murphy fans. Is one guy who's got a great site, promotes the heck out of Murphy, but he's really said a lot of, you know, basically trash talk about Urban. I'm not gonna say the name of the site or whatever, but whoever it is done a great job to promote Audie Murphy, but you know, Colonel Matt Urban is virtually unknown to the American public, and I would argue he actually had the more medals. Now the more that I've looked at it, there's a book by a gentleman by the name of Boven, who also was a World War II guy, who eventually befriended Matt Urban. Let me cut to the chase from why I'm bringing up his book. There's a part of it where he mentions that the paperwork was failed to be received. So Audie Murphy is well deserving of the of his credit, but of course there's no movie of Matt Urban. I've hit up the post office. There's no stamp for him either. Boven goes on to write, who really is America's most decorated soldier? For years it was thought that Lieutenant Audie Murphy was the most decorated soldier. He was certainly deserving of the title. True hero, credited with killing at least 240 of the enemy, capturing many others, fighting in 9 campaigns, wounded 3 times. Keep in mind that Matt Urban was wounded 7 times. Audie Murphy went on to star in 44 movies, the best of which is known. The title of his biography, To the Hell and Back. Unfortunately, most people get their information from Hollywood. And he was a handsome guy, a great for the post-war effort, if you want to call it. Now, he goes on to write, however, in 1980, Lieutenant Matt Urban finally received a long-overdue Congressional Medal of Honor and several combat awards, including his 7th Purple Heart, which he had earned but failed to receive. According to the 1989 Guinness Book of World Records, Urban was declared the most combat decorated soldier in history, or whatnot. Why the delay in receiving his awards? Max Wolf of the 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry of Regiment 9, Infantry Division, directed Sergeant Earl Evans to send the Congressional Medal of Honor nomination to Congress. 2 days later, shrapnel from an exploding shell killed Major Wolf, and a few weeks later, Sergeant Evans was captured by the Germans. After the war, when Evans was freed, he wrote to the Pentagon, inquiring about the nomination papers. He was certainly prepared and forwarded the report through proper channels, and could not understand why there was a response. There's another part in this book by Mr. Boven where he goes on he questions, why is this? He's a you know, what you'd call a polite gentleman, so he's not going to say it was a cover-up, a conspiracy. He wasn't that kind of guy. Now, Matt Urban was of a higher rank as well. He was a battalion commander. He reached that rank. He was an ROTC officer kind of guy. That's, I mean, if this is a competition, you gotta put that into motion. Now, you know, Audie Murphy's a huge star, so there's no comparing them in who is more remembered or whatever. I'm just being what you might think a bit nasty here, bringing up this topic, for the reason why I think it's an outrage that the other guy, our guy, let's say, in the camp of us, the Polish Americans, is so suppressed to my mind, or just there's no, movie, or he's unknown. As far as I know, he was unknown to Audie himself. So there's some excellent articles about this. If you just Google it up for yourself, simply Audie Murphy versus Matt Urban or something like that. There's one by the Toledo Blade, George Tanber. I'll leave this in the lining notes. Who has more medals depends on who's counting. Who was the most decorated, Audie Murphy or Matt Urban? For years it was given that Audie Murphy was the man. A movie in which he starred in fueled his legend to hell and back. Excellent movie. Incidentally, even Audie Murphy's kind of getting forgotten now, but that's another topic. He remained a Hollywood name until his death in a 1971 plane crash. Now, my channel is mostly about stuff that you're not supposed to talk about, so I will just briefly digress here and mention that at the time his plane went down, Audie was looking into the assassination of RFK. And there was a book by a former LAPD police detective that's nearly impossible to get a hold of, Mr. Gary Wean. I'll leave what information I can get in the notes on it. I have possessed it at one time. I do not any longer, unfortunately. Yeah, he was looking into the RFK assassination. Take it for what it is. It's a weird coincidence to my mind that his plane went down at that time. But hey, nothing bad. Not bad things happen. Nobody would lose Colonel Matt Urban's congressional medal paperwork on a paper with that. They wouldn't do that. The Army wouldn't do that. Then, in 1980, previously lost records detailing the accomplishments of the lesser-known Matt Urban resulted in President Carter awarding with the Medal of Honor. Suddenly, a debate emerged: Murphy or Urban? So there you go. For years and years, it's covered up. Finally gets his Medal of Honor. People start to notice Urban might be the number one. The U.S. Army Human Resources Command in Alexandria, Virginia, says the two men were tied at 29 each. Oh, Audie Murphy's Super Channel. They're tied. Oh, I've seen guys yelling at me. Audie wouldn't even want the damn medal. He was humble. He was a creation of Hollywood, and his friends were in Hollywood, and he was a big shot. Matt Urban, there's like a drug and rehab center for him. They won't even give him a postage stamp. I've written to the post office myself and received the brush off. Although they were kind to respond to me and they did it professionally, they have no intention of getting him a stamp or whatever. So people are like, Audie's the number one. There are many cultural and political reasons why Urban's amazing feats in World War II are suppressed. If anything, the two men are first among equals, or whatever your phrase it is. But The Guinness Book of World Records put Urban as number 1. And Mr. Murphy is second with 28. They gave him 29, 28. So, but then later on the next edition, 91, they said, well, because of the subjective nature of interpreting significant certain metals, they no longer list this or something like that. So that sort of sounds like bullshit too, but whatever. So another gentleman from the Lucas County Veterans Office examined them and noticed that there were serious discrepancies between the two that slight Mr. Urban. Oh, shocking. Specifically, he said Mr. Murphy has 3 medals that Mr. Urban mysteriously is missing. Distinguished Service Cross, Good Conduct Medal, Army of Occupation. A gentleman from Monroe, Michigan. There were 2 areas. Matt Urban was, I believe, born in Buffalo, then he moved over to Monroe, Michigan. I have a Starchlog fan, thank you. Sent me a lot of documents and newspaper clippings. Basically a bunch of stuff where people were begging, pretty much begging, to get the postage stamp, get him a statue, get him a bridge. The bridge may have gone through. I'm not sure on that. I got to check up on that. Needless to say, on a national scene, Urban is still, just like his nickname that I believe the Germans gave it to him, the Ghost. It's impossible to speculate why Urban did not have a weapons qualification badges or the Army of Occupation medal. And this Colonel Atreya says Urban's family can petition the Army Awards branch for this. So he actually pretty much has more than Audie. Sorry, that's what I say. Of course, there's thousands of people that will get on message boards or whatever and say, no, I'm sorry. As to why he doesn't have a movie that could write itself, basically he starts out the war. Matt Urban was a boxing coach. He was an officer, but he was the kind of officer that liked the men and fought with the men, gunning with the men. And unbeknownst to him, there's a professional Golden Gloves boxer aboard the ship as they're heading into war. Mr. Seebeck, or Seabold. I'll get his name in the liner notes for brief comments on that. Officers are not allowed to box enlisted men. They're chanting, we want an officer, we want an officer. He takes off his shirt, fights the Golden Gloves champion. Unbeknownst to him, Urban had beat the Annapolis champ and the West Point boxing champion. But this guy's a pro boxer. They have an amazing fight. After that, everybody salutes Urban. They have a tie. They just listed it as the story's a tie. These guys, against orders, jump into the fight. They get in a boat. Dead bodies everywhere. It's like a movie. There's his buddy. He makes friends with the boxing guy, and they enter the battle together against the wishes of the officers who were too timid, to his mind. There was a question in Urban's mind whether he would kill another man. A fellow officer he finds decapitated. Urban confesses that he lost it, tried to put the guy's head back in his body. Boven's account is not fucking Saving Private Ryan, you know what I mean? Sorry for the bad use of language. That's just to point that his thing is dark, and it's not quite frankly, Hollywood Audie Murphy Western movies. It's is that a slight against Audie? No. Again, I say that he's being forgotten too. So with the change in America's way of life and whatnot, they say a lot about veterans and stuff, but you know, I don't know. They've been deployed 18 years in Afghanistan. Get them out. I wonder what Audie and Matt would say about, you know, not pulling the troops out of there. Pull them out. I think Trump is trying to do it. They're blocking him. Anyway, I digress, as I always do. So I'm hopefully going to vlog about more his biographical sketch again, and so forth. But there is articles that it's very much in contention. You know, there's no doubt that the system in Hollywood are much devoted to the idea of Audie being America's most decorated hero, and that's absolutely under contention. And I would say it's a bit of a cover-up. As a matter of fact, Mr. Boven and the part, I don't have it in front of me, but he's like, Evans, what happened? Did this paperwork get lost up at the regimental headquarters? What is the deal? I urge everybody to try to get a hold of this book. And keep in mind, there's a lot of heroes like General Patton and MacArthur who are, you'll see a lot of negative, you know, a lot of tearing down of these guys. That's off topic also, but his Medal of Honor was long suppressed, and he finally got it. 2 times he escaped and went AWOL and returned to his men. This tremendous story about Audie Murphy holding back. I think he machine gunned down like 50 guys on his tank. Single-handedly. But as far as the art of combat is concerned, Urban's feats were similar in nature, and you have to combine the fact that he also had to command many men. I will go more into that biographical part, but he had taken out single-handedly Rommel's radio station, one of Rommel's main radio stations, alone. He had got wounded and with a bazooka handled 2 tanks, saving untold amount of men while wounded. He also, when many guys were killed and couldn't man a tank, he fortunately was able to do so, and he made a breakthrough. I'm sounding like I'm suppressing the greatness of his narrative, but I'm not prepared to speak it at the moment. I'm just right now want to cite the great discrepancy. The boxing match alone, the battlefield heroics, are something out of the movies. And you'll actually, I've just noticed the Arlington National Cemetery website itself does actually contend that he was the most decorated, which is interesting. Matt Urban, the most decorated medals, 3 more than war hero Audie Murphy. He manned an intact tank with no commander or gunner, not moving, and they had a breakthrough. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. So, actually, and he got this nickname, the Ghost, by the Germans. Then again, it contradicts. I think it's sorry. Both Murphy and Urban were awarded 29 medals. There we go. There's a tie. So it says sometimes tie. And again, this stories of mysteriously the paperwork not reaching the command structure. Very disturbing. I will be talking more about his narrative and repeat the boxing story because I like it in another vlog. But again, I'm going to leave in the liner notes. The things that I have brought up anew are the need for a Polish-American hero. I say that without shame. A need for at least a stamp for this guy. A need for a movie. There's no doubt that Irish Americans played an amazingly important role in World War II. The Sullivans, Audie Murphy himself, Doolittle, many other Irish guys, but the Poles in Poland themselves weren't allowed to march on Victory Day. They broke the codes that won the war. All you hear about is Alan Turing. Their squadron, the 303 Squadron, was the best of the war, the best record. They were the largest exile army. And hats off to the Irish brothers who fought in World War II, but Ireland itself wasn't involved. They stayed out. Some would say that's smart. Poland didn't have any choice. They were attacked by Germany and the Soviet Union. The Ghost. I'll leave in the liner notes these here, or just Google it up like I'm doing. Who has more medals? He's the Ghost. As a clue, the Wikipedia leaves them both as Audie Murphy, they call one of the most decorated American combat soldiers. They say the same thing for Urban. Take away movies and fanfare, whatever, you could say a lot of this stuff is political, unfortunately. Alright, best wishes. God bless. I'll check with you guys later. Take care.